Hi, and welcome to the Diamond Report for Tuesday, January 24th, 2017. This is your host, Doug Diamond. Well, I've got a lot for the show today, lots of information. However, I'm going to try and keep it as short as I possibly can because I know that's really important. It's important to me, and I know it's important to you, the viewer. And thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, let's jump right into Earthquake 3D here. This huge earthquake you're seeing on your screen, this massive 8.0, 7.9 reported by the USGS. They tend to downgrade things slightly. I think it was an 8.0. But what you're seeing here is the result of what Dutchsinse had forecast some 2 weeks ago at this point. It was based again on that very large and very deep 7.3 quake that happened about 12 days prior to this 8.0 happening. Now this 8.0 happened on January 22nd at 10:30 p.m. Earlier that day I had put out a Diamond Report saying to watch for movement in Papua New Guinea, and that is exactly what we got. Not only did we get movement, we got the largest movement in the last 365 days. It is massive, and 8.0 is huge. And if you don't believe me, let's turn on the shell here. This shows the amount of energy this thing has in it, and there's other rings here because it's other agencies reporting slight variations, but it's all the same quake. It's the 8.0 or 7.9, however you want to say it. But you can see here the amount of pressure that this thing put off. Okay, so let's take a look at the next few days and just see what we might expect with further movement based off of this 8.0 earthquake that's just happened on Saturday. I'm going to back the magnitude back down here to show everything 2.0 and greater. As you can see, there are a lot of quakes that have happened. And let's just look at the last 2 days or so. And again, I want to try and keep this as short as possible. On Saturday, I mentioned we should be watching the Kyushu region of southern Japan, and we've already had 4.2, 4.3 quake happen in that area. Now, we're probably still going to get further movement on down this way, but that's pretty close already. Now here's Papua New Guinea, this area here where the big quake was, and we still have not seen any movement in this region. And this is the fulcrum point, the middle point between these two places, and now between these two places. So we'd be looking at right in here somewhere. And this is again what I said back on Saturday. And just real quick over here on the United States, you can see again we've had 2.0 movement right along the North American Craton, which extends down here, down into Texas, up through this green area, up here through the Midwest where the New Madrid seismic zone is, and then back up the east coast of the U.S. And you can see that they've spilled out clear over here, even up into Canada. We've had quite a few magnitude 2.0s, and I've got the rings turned down just so you can kind of see what's going on. The other thing I mentioned in the Saturday Diamond Report was that we should be watching central Peru. And if we look at this area, it still has not been hit yet. We've had some close, but we're still looking at the middle point between these quakes here and these down here. So we're looking at central Peru. That's the middle point. That's the silent zone, the area that hasn't moved yet. So we're still watching for that. Okay, so going from our earthquake forecast into a little bit of news. This week I wanted to bring you up to speed, as much as I am at least, on the topic of Antarctica. Now, we're seeing more and more headlines about Antarctica. I have personally posted quite a few, it seems like lately, with the strange goings on. This is just one here where it's talking about the heat in Antarctica and cracking the ice shelves. Now, this has to do with geoengineering. This has to do with the runaway total meltdown Earth is now in the midst of. And that is a topic for another discussion. We can talk about that at length, how geoengineering is warming the planet and how it is cracking these ice shelves. But it's not just that. There are other man-made situations that are causing the Earth to heat up. But certainly, as my friend Dane Wigington says of geoengineeringwatch.org, geoengineering is the single largest cause, the single greatest cause to this battle that we find ourselves in with global warming, and it's real. I know people like to say the Earth is cooling, it's not warming, and they don't understand, though, that the cooling that's happening is all engineered. The cooling is not natural. It's through a process a lot of times called chemical ice nucleation. That's why in this particular post I had said global cooling equals engineered winter, chemical ice nucleation, geoengineering. Global warming is real, but it is being used by the power structure to enslave us and control our lives, so that the power will be transferred to them so that they can control us. But the reality is the Earth is in total meltdown, and it's far worse than they're telling us. It's a very complex issue. So that's what I posted. That's what this article's about. However, we're going to get a little deeper into Antarctica, and I want to show you some things that you might not be aware of. Now, to my non-Christian friends out there, you may have a hard time with this, and you may say, oh, you're crazy. You may say it's total bunk. You may say that you believe that everything that I'm about to show you is untrue. However, if you are a Christian and you have a biblical basis for your worldview, it's not hard at all to understand what's really happening in this world. And just because, for the people that are not Christians, just because you can't understand that because you're not a Christian does not mean that that's not true. In other words, the truth is the truth, no matter who speaks it. And if Christians are speaking the truth based on biblical truth and you don't believe that, that does not mean it's not true. Let's go ahead and go to our first clip from Greg Hunter's show, USA Watchdog, and he's interviewing Steve Quayle, who's a very well-known Christian author. I have several of Steve's books, and he's been on numerous radio shows and has been involved in radio for 25 plus years. And I will have the honor of meeting Steve and hanging out with him and Tim Alberino, L.A. Marzulli, and Anselm P. Rambla at a conference and expedition in Peru. That's coming up later this year, so I'm really looking forward to that. I know it's going to be a great learning experience.
I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USAWatchdog.com. We're going to go off the beaten path today, way off the beaten path. We're going to go down to Antarctica. I know it sounds bizarre, but a lot of people been going to Antarctica. Big, important people. They've been going to Antarctica recently. They have been going to Antarctica ever since, well, the very beginning of President Obama's very first term. And I compiled a list of headlines for you, so we can anchor this in some reality before we get into a reality and introduce our guest. And I just want to start with this headline. Obama sends Biden on special mission to Antarctica. Look at the date, Huffington Post, 1/22/09. Right after he is inaugurated, for the very first time, President Obama sends Vice President Biden to Antarctica. Don't you think that's bizarre? And now we fast forward to John Kerry, the Secretary of State. John Kerry's Antarctic visit highlights continent and climate policies under threat. That's the New York Times, 11/15/16. This was election day. The date is the date of the article, but this was election day. He was asked all kinds of questions about it. It was very squirmy on it, very Weasley. Didn't really want to give a lot. Wanted to just talk about climate change. 11/15/16, Putin to visit Antarctica. This is the Moscow Times, 1/18/17. Patriarch Kirill, this is the Russian Pope. This is after the first meeting of the Roman Catholic popes, Pope Francis, and they haven't met in 1,000 years. Patriarch Kirill meets penguins at Russian base as he becomes first Orthodox leader to visit Antarctica. That's the Daily Telegraph, or the Telegraph in 2016. Secret Nazi military base discovered by Russian scientists in the Arctic. This is the UK Independent. This is something equivalent to, the New York Times or Washington Post. Secret Nazi military base discovered by Russian scientists in the Arctic. And this is in the Independent. And then let's just go over here. This is the Governor General's historic visit to Antarctica. This is the Governor General of Australia, February 4th, 2013. And last but not least, Buzz Aldrin, who is a Freemason, is medically evacuated from where? Antarctica. Listen, Antarctica is not on the way to anywhere. The president can't, fly to the Middle East and say, oh, I think I'll stop off in Germany. Antarctica is a place you can go to that is the size of, you could probably fit it right into the continental United States and Canada. It's a continent. It's a huge landmass. And you can only get to Antarctica by going through Patagonia or through South America, the tip of South America, the Drake Strait, I believe it's called, or go to New Zealand and go that way. That's the way Kerry went through to Antarctica. So why am I saying all this about Antarctica? Well, folks, to me as a reporter, a former mainstream media reporter, something is going on. And I looked for somebody who could come on and say, what do you think is going on? And our next guest is a 25-year talk show host. He is the author of 11 books, 2 of which have to do with Antarctica. He's got also a documentary film producer. He is a precious metals dealer. He's first dealt with the Antarctica, actually Nazis in Antarctica. Probably people thought he was crazy back in 2005, and now it's out in the mainstream press. Nazis in Antarctica in 2005. His latest book has come out just in December of 2016 called Empire Beneath the Ice, How the Nazis Won World War II. Now, this is an artist rendition. This isn't a real picture of a flying saucer, but you get the point. This is Empire Beneath the Ice. This is the latest of 11 books by, and let's bring him on, Steve Quayle of stevequayle.com. Steve Quayle, I know it was a very long introduction, but thank you for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
Well, Greg, this is a delight for me to come on and to share with your viewers just why Antarctica is in the news and in the headlines to the degree it is. It was left kind of as just that ice base south of South America. But what most people don't understand, and this is critical, is that in 1947, the United States sent a war flotilla to the Antarctic under Admiral Byrd, and it was called Operation High Jump, and it was to seek out and to destroy the hidden Nazi bases that intelligence agencies had provided them the documentation for. It wasn't a small thing, 13 ships, 4,700 men, and the state-of-the-art, if you will, advances in U.S. weaponry. The bad news is we got our rear ends kicked, and in 1947, it was actually February, things started in August of 46, ended in 1947, Admiral Byrd came back and reported to Congress what had happened. The Russians, incidentally, had made a video, because they were spying, of our aircraft encountering flying saucers. Now, in order to put this into perspective, 2 of the heads of NASA, which is our National Aeronautic and Space Administration, were former Nazis. Very prominent scientists.
Operation, and just how did that happen? And let's just go ahead and tell people a program called Operation Paperclip, where we were in a rush to beat the Russians, to go into Germany and take their scientists and bring them over to America to help with our warfare, Defense Department, and advance our technology. Correct?
Absolutely. And when you deal with Hermann Oberth and you deal with Dr. Werner von Braun, and Hermann Oberth's famous statement is, think not that we Germans were brighter than any other scientists. We had help from other worlds. And that's interesting because, over the years... That
was actually, and just so you know, I just want to kind of bring this in here, because I don't want people... we talked about this in the very pre-interview, that I don't want people to think you're crazy, Steve Quayle. You're not crazy. I would never put you on if I thought you were. And many people are fans of yours and do not think you're crazy. Some people may, but that quote that you gave was a quote that I heard for my own ears on the History Channel. I heard that quote that you just gave. So go ahead. I interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, Operation Paperclip, but there were 7 other operations under the same thing. We brought in, for instance, even the Japanese weapons designer, Dr. Ishii, ISHI. So that was the plan of Western intelligence to bring it in. So let's get back to the Antarctic. When Admiral Byrd came back, he had the first Secretary of Defense on his side to tell the American people what was really going on in the Antarctic, and that was Forrestal. Forrestal, again, was the first Secretary of Defense, and when he was wanting to tell the American people what they had found through Operation High Jump and the advanced technology, he was thrown out a third-story window at Bethesda Naval Hospital. So when you're dealing with the Antarctica and you're dealing with the history of the Antarctica, it is steeped in absolute not only mythology and, let's just say this, mythological references, but in the 1500s, even the Piri-Reis map showed Antarctica without ice. Now that basically comes into total conflict with a modern geologic time frame of glaciation. So what really is going down there? And here's the billion-dollar question, probably trillion. Why are the world's religious leaders and the world's most powerful leaders going to the Antarctica? I don't think Kirill, the Russian Orthodox Patriarch, is going down there to, just basically meet penguins. And with no disrespect, man, someone or something, and it's both, has summoned the world's leaders, both political and religious, to the Antarctica. And I believe that based on Admiral Byrd's testimony, the testimony of multiple generals, multiple intelligence people. I've been on talk radio, Greg, 25 years, and I couldn't know what I'm sharing with your audience unless someone told me. So I don't know everything, but I certainly know what they've told me in reference to Antarctica.
I want to get into, so you think that there are actual beings, actual people there living in their, quote, empire beneath the ice, and you think they are summoning world leaders down there for a face-to-face? Because they certainly don't want to email end up at WikiLeaks.
Absolutely. And the interesting thing is that this goes right along. We were talking in the time before we went live that even Francis Bacon in the 1627 in his New Atlantis was referring to ancient technology that, by the way, he didn't get to finish the book, but ancient technology that was astounding, from genetic engineering to skyscrapers, laser weapons. I mean, this is in 1627. So what we're dealing with is the idea, Greg, that there is an advanced civilization. Now, I want to clear up something. There are those who believe that we were created by aliens. I'm not on that bandwagon. The Anunnaki, I'll make this easy, just the simplest statement. The Anunnaki are the fallen angels. That's who's represented in all the Sumerian presentations, on their stelae, on their drawings and their clay tablets, everything. But the Bible talks about fallen angels. Now, why is that so important? Because we're dealing with the time where we're going to see a universal religion, a universal government, and a universal monetary system. And now, after we watched Davos, now everybody wants to take the cash away from America. Obviously, they're doing a trial run in India. But it's as if all of the world's leaders, and especially the most prominent religious leaders, are having to answer to someone who has superior intellect, superior intelligence, but a very, I would say, dark and sinister future for the world. In other words, global control of everything and everyone. So that's who I believe is summoning everyone down there. Now, listen, Antarctica is a continent. You made that point. And by people not recognizing the fact of the size of it, the Nazis found evidence. And so did the British, and so did the Russians, of if you will, a land beneath the ice. It was actually a Doug McClure movie that was, I think there were 2 or 3 of them, German U-boats going into these vast tunnels. Now, here's what's interesting. The pyramids have come back into prominence that are in Antarctica. We're now seeing all of the...
in other words, there are big, huge pyramids under the ice in Antarctica.
Right, and as Antarctica starts to melt, there's 2 reasons that Antarctica is melting. And, they'll claim the ice sheet is deeper here or lesser there, or the big crack. But the point that's important for people to understand is there are so many volcanoes around the continent of Antarctica, both within the ice and surrounding the ice, not to mention that a lot of the electromagnetic warfare, which, by the way, is a real thing. If you're talking about heating the ionosphere up with what are called ionospheric heaters, there's 72 of them around the world. When you're getting all of the backscatter of actual radio waves melting, in essence, they're microwaving the poles, one cannot be surprised that literally the ice is melting. Now, why are these people here? The biggest announcement that's getting set to come, the Vatican is already prepping the way that if there are aliens, can they be baptized? My answer is no, they're not created in the image and likeness of God. My answer to those that say, well, God's a figment of your imagination, the aliens created us, then my simple statement is, who created them? And for the record, we're talking about civilizations that, even according to the Sumerian Table of Kings, go back 225,000 years. So I deal with a lot of, I would say, pre-Adamic stuff, meaning prior to the creation of Adam and Eve, 6,000 years ago, there were civilizations on the earth that also got into genetic manipulation. And interestingly enough, so much of it goes back to Antarctic. So I believe it's almost like, if you will, 2001 Space Odyssey. They're not just finding the obelisks on the moon. They're finding the entities, and in my opinion, they're fallen angels. And let me make something clear. Fallen angels, because they are of a different level of creation, don't die. You know, so we're talking about things that can pass on hidden, esoteric, occult knowledge, and have, to the adepts, those who basically buy the lie, get to do the, if you will, they're brought up to speed on what are called black physics. Black physics are what exists beyond the PhD level of physics, and we're seeing it in CERN. I think what is so critical for people to understand is, as more activity takes place in CERN, the occult rituals associated with it are so in your face that, you know, you can't dismiss this kind of stuff anymore as being, oh, the rantings of this fringe or that fringe. Something is happening, and the Antarctic is critical. It's my contention that because of the advanced technology of the Third Reich, and especially their pharmaceuticals and their finances and everything, and you mentioned Operation Paperclip and their intelligence, that they went under the ice, so to speak, and that they pretty much came into contact with beings, sentient beings, which obviously Hermann Oberth and Werner von Braun and others have made reference to so many times until they passed away. So all this stuff is a matter of record, and when you put all the records together, it points to this. There is some entity or group of entities that are sentient, that means obviously the thinking, that have advanced technology, and that basically give orders to the religious and political leaders of our day. But getting back to the Antarctica, when I have talked to the people I've talked to over the years, whether they've been in military and high ranking, I'm talking active duty.
People come call you on the phone and come by in Bozeman, Montana, is where you are now, and they come to see you, and you're going to tell us what they tell you. Go ahead, hit me.
Well, first of all, a lot of them, obviously with the internet, everybody knows who's talking to everybody, and with the National Spy Organization, most everything is known. But there are times when the people literally show up at my office, or they'll want to meet. And by the way, I don't meet with anybody anywhere without, backup, because again, this stuff is very sensitive. But they come by and they talk and they tell me what's really going on. Somebody said, I've been there. I have spent time in the underground, if you will, citadels in the Antarctic. Now, these are guys who, by the way, in the military, you always hear this, well, that's above my pay grade. Well, early on, I said, listen, I don't want to talk to anybody who makes that claim. I want to talk to the guys that can't make that claim because they are the top of the pay grade. So, fortunately, I believe God gave me a promise, and I believe it's fulfilled in a statement. If you will tell people what's really going on, I'll bring the people to you that will tell you what's really going on. Hey, I live in Bozeman, Montana, the frozen north, at least lately. Beautiful place, but, who comes out of their way? Who flies in? Who says you want to meet? And by the way, they meet with me in my office with my, people there, etc. I don't meet anybody off. Or they call me, or they text me, or they produce by courier. documents, which, by the way, once I read them, I commit them to my memory and I destroy them. That's the only safe way I know to be, Greg. But the thing is that the common thread is the fact that there is a group, and I will call them this, of fallen angels. People can call them exobiotic entities. They can call them aliens, but they're fallen angels. Now, obviously, who wants a one-world religion that's totally at war with the God of the Bible? It would be the fallen angels, and Lucifer is their head, who became Satan. The thing is that Satan means adversary. And what's interesting, just as an aside, if you look at even the headlines of today on Matt Drudge, you're looking at cannibalism, you're looking at sitcoms, you're looking at people going nuts and eating people's faces. The best thing I can tell everyone is, even when you're dealing with giants, and a giant, I'm talking the historic giants such as Goliath, and they're found all over the world. I've written extensively on giants for, I guess, almost 35 years. The point being is that the one common denominator, and you come into Latin America, Mexico, South America, everybody had an appetite for human flesh. That's where we get the word ghouls. So what's fascinating to me, as all of this information is breaking, that we're dealing with more and more, quote, references to ancient beings, to giant beings, and the concurrent headlines dealing with cannibalism. Most people don't understand that the Aztec, Inca, and Maya all practiced ritual cannibalism, but they all claim that the giants from the East built their civilizations. In other words, people with war hammers, war claws, and spears made out of shells and obsidians didn't build the edifices, the pyramids, and also, Greg, they're worldwide. They're in Antarctica. They're in the Arctic. They're all over the world. China's got some of the biggest pyramids in the world, and they basically burned dirt up to them, and then made terraces and planted trees. So the point that I guess is critical for people to understand, the Antarctic, and mark my words, will become the source of the continuing and ongoing revelation that's going to basically shake everyone's belief system, unless I believe they're grounded in a biblically accurate picture of history. And I don't believe, and neither do you, that the Hebrews built the pyramids. The pyramids transcend that. And again, what's critical for people to understand is this, is that those who control history determine the future.
So if that wasn't enough about Antarctica, let's go ahead and hear what the Secure Team has to say as well.
Hey, what's up, guys? Tyler here again with Secure Team. We have another bombshell discovery in Antarctica. And I don't know, this may be, well, in my opinion, is probably one of the more, if not the most obvious, unnatural, anomalous structure that we have found at our South Pole. This comes after our earlier discoveries of pyramids. Oh, and by the way, you've likely seen all my videos featuring the famous pyramid that was recently discovered sticking up out of the snow. It's been all over the web, 4-sided pyramid. It's been visited, in fact. We have pictures of it. You can go on Google and look this up for yourselves. A secret history, without a doubt, exists down in Antarctica. And we have also found, and are going to show you today, a second pyramid that has also been discovered right around the corner from this one. And that, to my knowledge, has not been featured by those who have done news stories on this one because, it's in such a close proximity. But first, let's go ahead and zoom in on this new finding of what I can only describe as a clear-cut shot of a saucer of some sort sitting within a mountain and partially sticking out from one of the many cave systems there. So we're zooming in now. And here we are. And, a viewer tweeted this over to me and he said, you know what, with all of the stuff that's been featured and found down at the South Pole, why is it that this disc, what is quite obviously a disc, not been featured before? And I thought to myself, wow, I have never actually seen this. So whoever found this, good on you. You definitely have an eagle eye for these things. And guys, look at this. It's obvious. I don't have to mess with this, this is a disc. Look, it even has the shadow underneath it. And what would appear to be some sort of design on the top of it. You see this sort of V-shaped design on the top of it, and look at the outer rim. Look how sharp that looks. This thing looks like a blade, like a saw blade. where you have the sharpened edge wrapping around it that's always just a little bit lighter than the rest of the metal. And that looks like what we're seeing here, a very sharp, circular disc sitting out from under this cave here. And if you'll notice just to the side, just to the left of this disc, you can see a portion of the cave system where the white snow is going within this cave. And you can actually see the light being reflected from this snow on the inside walls of the cave from which this disc is sitting. Give me a logical explanation that would lead me to believe that this object here is natural. And I remind you of the saucer-shaped entrances that we showed you in a previous video, also found just down the road a piece from this disc here. These entrances, as we'll call them, in the side of these mountains, one of which looks almost to be laser cut into the mountain, into the ice, and is in a saucer shape. Just a couple of days ago, we found yet another strange circular disc sitting underneath the waters of, once again, our mysterious South Pole. You're seeing that disc here, which actually looks very similar to what we're seeing here. But, yeah, I wanted to get this posted up ASAP. This is, in my mind, again, mind-blowing stuff here. How much more will we find down in Antarctica? And it all goes back to all of this interest in the South Pole. Forget about all the Nazi stuff. Yes, we know that the Nazis went on at least 3 documented expeditions to Antarctica for unknown reasons. Yes, we know and have found evidence that they created bases there and were testing flying saucer-shaped craft using what many have said is back-engineered alien technology. Let's forget all of that. Let's forget that Admiral Byrd went down to the South Pole with a Navy fleet of 4,000 men and encountered flying saucers that were bursting out of the Arctic waters. And let's really forget when Mr. Byrd said that one of the greatest threats on this earth does not come from other countries, but from a force located at the bottom of our planet. So let's forget all of it. And let's just talk about the number of world leaders who have been making these mysterious visits to Antarctica over the past years, especially last year. Whether it be the president, whether it be the Pope, whether it be Vladimir Putin, whether it be Secretary of State John Kerry, whether it be Apollo astronaut and moonwalker Buzz Aldrin. And you get a lot of different strange reasons for these visits, some of which are done under the simple guise of a vacation. Although I don't know anyone in their right mind who would want to go to Antarctica for vacation. Others are done under the guise of global warming. That's a big one. Global warming. Anybody can yell global warming as an excuse. That doesn't make it so. Bill Clinton became the first U.S. president to visit Antarctica's deep freeze base back in September of 1990. Many years later, we've had all of the people that I previously mentioned. In 2013, we had Prince Harry of Wales, who along with his royal family paid a visit to the South Pole. And what was strange about that trip was the description of why they went. When asked, they said that the trip was made to, quote, to highlight the extraordinary courage and determination of the men and women who have been wounded while serving their countries and to draw attention to the need to help in their career transition. A very strange statement to which many people replied, well, why would it be necessary to travel to the South Pole to achieve such a thing? You could have easily highlighted the extraordinary courage of the men and women of the military in your home countries. Why the need to visit the South Pole? So many random yet notable politicians and government figures have been making their way down to this no man's land. Much of it has been said to be due to the discovery of this mysterious pyramid, and it's been said that there is an ongoing cover-up, that there has been a firestorm in the halls of government around the world, people who are trying to keep this pyramid under wraps and to hide the true reason for its existence. Now, as I said earlier, I discovered a second pyramid just around the bend from this one, and I'll go ahead and show you that here. So here we are back on Google Earth, and now we will go just down a ways to an almost identical, partially uncovered pyramid that again is in very close proximity to this one. So here we are. We'll go ahead and zoom in here. And again, here we have yet another four-sided pyramid. The back side of the pyramid is more buried than the front side, but you can clearly see the four sides of this thing. They all meet, and it's virtually identical to the main and larger pyramid that is located just 3.4 miles away. We have 2 new discoveries today. We have this new, smaller pyramid, and we have this disc, yet again parked within a cave. And you couple that with the other mysterious discs that we have found all over the South Pole that we will continue to find, it would seem. You put that together with everything I've spoken about today, you make your decision, and honestly tell me, does nothing seem strange about this? And do you truly buy into the government's cover story behind all of these high-profile visits recently?
So it's obvious to anybody with half of a brain in their head that something wild and crazy is going on in Antarctica. And we may never know the full story, but when we take a look at some of these things that are freely available on Google Earth, you can see that here's a couple of pyramids here. You can see that, people are not just making this stuff up. Here's the staircase that they reported in one of their other videos on Secure Team's YouTube channel. This is a staircase. To me, it almost looks like one of those staircases you'd see up the side of a pyramid. You can't really tell by this picture what it's going to, but it sure doesn't look natural. And then we've got a couple of discs and a couple of caves. Let me jump over here to the caves real quick so you can see those. These are just a few places that I've marked based on the coordinates that they gave in a few of their other videos. Look at this one. This is this crazy looking cave that almost looks like it has a lid that goes over the top of it. I mean, that does not look natural. It looks man-made. I don't know if it is, but obviously something is going on. Here's another cave. Now this one, it looks like there's light coming from the inside. It's hard to tell exactly what that is. And now here are the 2 discs that they've reported on as well. I went ahead and bookmarked these just so you could see them. Again, you can kind of take this with a grain of salt. I mean, maybe you don't believe it. Now this one, it's this gray semicircle here. You can see it's sort of hidden under this. It almost looks like it's fitted into a pocket right here. But it does look like it's something that was man-made. It's a pretty good semicircle there. And one more. Now this one, is this right here. Now this one to me is a little more impressive because you can almost see a pattern on it and a gray line around the outside of it. It's pretty wild. Anyway, as you can see, Antarctica has quite a few mysteries, and I encourage you, if you don't know about the Piri-Reis map, to certainly look that up, and you'll find that, just a few hundred years ago, according to that map, Antarctica was not ice covered, and in fact was further north than it is now. And yet people think that the map is accurate. So I think this whole thing raises more questions than it provides answers. Okay, well that's all for the Diamond Report for today. And before we go, I just wanted to let you know about the new Facebook page that my good friend Tasha Lee has set up for me. And she was very kind to spend her time doing this. If you go to facebook.com/The Diamond Report, you can stay up with all the different shows and whatever else I have to say just by going to the Facebook page. And I would also remind you that in addition to Facebook, I'm also on scene.life. You can find me on there, scene.life/diamonddisc, and on Gab, and it's gab.ai/diamonddisc. And I do have a Twitter account as well. I use that mostly for my music business related stuff, so I don't really do a lot of awareness type issues posting on Twitter. I do a little bit, but it's such a vast wasteland of social justice warriors. I just sort of figured it was kind of a waste of time. So gab.ai for the Twitter likeness. So anyway, I would just encourage you to follow me over there if you would, and I will follow you back. And thanks again for listening and watching, and I'll see you next time.